Hello, I'm Rachel from Douentza Garden in Ireland, and you're very welcome to my greenhouse, where today I'm going to pot up nine different types of lilies in pots for use in the garden in the summer. And the great thing about having lilies in pots is that you can appreciate them early on in the greenhouse, and then you can put them out in the garden in any gaps you might have in the border. Just plop the pot in there. And if you don't want to continue longer term minding them and feeding them and watering them in pots, then you can always decide at a later stage to take them out of the pots and just plant them in situ in the garden. So today, 9 gorgeous types of lilies are going into pots, and that is going to herald me into the growing year next year. Okay, let's get on with it. It's autumn now, and the perfect time to pot up or to plant lilies in your garden. You can do it in spring or you can do it in autumn. I'm doing them now because I've recently purchased them, and you may remember my unboxing video when I opened up and gave you a brief glimpse of these gorgeous lilies that we're now going to deal with today. The lilies are going to go into clay pots here, which I have all along beside me. Now, having said that, there is nothing more beautiful than the sight of lilies in a clay pot. But the disadvantage of clay pots is twofold. Number one is that clay pots are perfect for any plant that needs to be really well drained. Lilies aren't necessarily a plant that needs good drainage in that way, so you need to do a lot of watering if you have your lilies in clay pots. And number two, and this is the biggie as far as I'm concerned, with clay pots and a mix and lilies, they are really heavy. And the whole idea of potting lilies in pots is that you can then be free and easy moving them around to where they're needed to inject a bit of colour in the garden. And if the lilies are very heavy, you might be reluctant to do that. I know I certainly am, and the result is that my garden doesn't get to look as good as it should because I am not up to lifting these pots around, and you have to go and get help, and you know, sometimes it doesn't happen. So my solution to this is to plant the lilies in plastic pots which fit inside the clay pots, so they're just easier to lift. Now, you will have noticed that these pots are all sparkly clean, and that's because I scrubbed them with soap recently. But full disclosure here, I don't normally wash my pots. Yes, for things that are brought into the house or things that need to be germinated from scratch, but I don't usually bother. In this case, however, clay can get very kind of grimy and mossy over time, and I just want my lilies to look their tip-top best, and that can only be achieved by giving the pots a good scrub, so that's what I did. So the best advice in terms of pot size is that single lilies should go in a 6-inch pot. If you're planting 3 lilies together, then they should go in a 10-inch pot. And here, this pot is about 11 inches, but some of these lilies will actually be 4. Having decided on what pot to use, the next thing I need to do is make up my mix, my potting mix for the lilies. And I've just emptied a bag of potting mix here in this wheelbarrow so that it's just easier to manage and to deal with. And I am going to put some bloodfish and bone in here just to give the lilies a bit of nutrients. Lilies are heavy feeders, and I don't want to rely completely on the liquid fertilizer that is so readily used in summer when they're in active growth. I'm also going to add in a bit of horticultural sand into the mix. Now, I don't have an exact measurement, and if you read the books, they won't mention putting in any horticultural sand, but I find that some mixes, depending on what your potting mix is, they can really be very sticky, and lilies do need good drainage, so I think this is going to help out a lot. So here's my first pot, and what I'm going to do is just put some of the mix at the base of the pot, unceremoniously dump it in like this. Now with lilies in pots, you want 3 inches above the bulb, but you also need an inch or so between the rim of the pot and the top of the mix. So we're talking really 4 inches. Now we can see here that it's 7 inches to the top of the pot, which should be good because my lilies are going to go in here and they have depth. Oh yes, they have depth. So the first lilies I'm potting are the ones that I dug up from elsewhere in my garden. The white ones. Now these came with a label years ago. I think the label was Apollo or Apollon, but it's not correct because the Apollon lily I think is not, it's an Asiatic one. And these definitely are not Asiatic lilies. I'm going to put the biggest lily in the center of the pot and then the smaller ones around the side. Okay. Right, so now we're going to cover the lilies. And we're going to, if we just measure here, so from there to the top of the pot is 5 inches. So 3 inches above the lilies and an inch between the rim and the top of the pot for watering. That should be just about right. Of course, if you're planting lilies in the ground, you need to plant them deeper than that. But if in doubt, you can check out my lily planting video that I made last year where I planted them in the garden. Okay, just give it a bit of a shake like that to make the mix go down. A little bit more. Okay, so you can see I've got, I have 2 inches between the top of the mix and the rim of the pot, which is good. And don't forget to label it. And now let's open up these new lilies that I recently bought, and this one is called Robert Swanson. 3 lilies. I have to rip it open. I can't wait. Okay, 3 nice plump lily bulbs that are going to look so wonderful in the pot. I'm going to put them in now. So here's the pot. There are the lilies, and time to just get on with the job. This one I'm really looking forward to how it looks. It's going to be fantastic. Okay, so the next lily I'm going to plant is the only one that's actually going into a clay pot. And it's a smaller clay pot because they're smaller sized bulbs and I only have 3 of them. So it won't be so bad to carry around. And this lily is one of my absolute favorites. It's the Regal lily. And I bought a lot of them. I bought, what does it say? 16. But 13 of them have already gone into the garden. I planted them directly in situ, but I kept back these 3 little angels to go into a pot and to fill the place with fragrance. You know, I might just keep this in the greenhouse, who knows, for the summer, and just enjoy that wonderful, wonderful fragrance. Now, this lily actually flowers a little bit earlier than some of the others. Many of them flower in August, but this one is earlier. It's a species one and it's absolutely amazing. I have some very, I don't know, personal memories and happy days. Happy day lily. Okay, there we go. Moving on. Now, you may have noticed that I tend to favour the trumpet and oriental type lilies, the ones that are scented and the ones that like acidic soil. And that is because, of course, I have acidic soil. So, you know, we should always grow what does well for us. Asiatic lilies do not do well for me at all. Okay, so in here we are going to try Stargazer. Stargazer is a beautiful and very popular lily that I can't wait to see flower in my garden. It's been a few years since I've had a Stargazer. Now these are actually packed in sawdust, and I'm not being particular about getting the sawdust off. It's going to be just fine in there. It's not going to rot the lilies or anything like that. And then just top up my Stargazer. These have gorgeous, gorgeous pink blooms, really large blooms. Look at my my dirty hands, very Halloween, isn't it? And yeah, I think everybody likes these. Unless, of course, you're allergic to scented lilies. That's also something to consider. And I'm taking the biggest pot of all now for my lily Beijing moon, which is this one here. And the reason is because I've got 5 of them. Now this is a gorgeous, gorgeous lily, very exotic looking, with green and pink and all kinds of super things in its mix. And you know what? I need to mix up some more, some more potting mix now. This is so much fun. There's nothing nicer than potting up when you can be warm and dry and where you have space to make a mess and just, you know, do your thing. And that's the wonderful thing that a new greenhouse can give you. Okay, so what have we got left? Pink Perfection. Now, this is a lovely dusky pink scented lily that I've grown before, and it has done rather well, although I think I've lost them over time. 4 bulbs, in we go. But you know, things happen. You can be digging and disturb something that you shouldn't disturb at the wrong time, or plant something more aggressive next to it, and that's basically the end of it. There she is. Okay, so for my next set of lilies, I actually have 10 of this lily called Fusion. And what I'm going to do is, well, plant it in 2 pots because I don't have a pot to take 10 lilies. We're going to put 5 in each. Gorgeous, gorgeous, plump, juicy lilies. Can't wait to see how these look next year. Oh! Watch out for that. Clouds of compost. Last set of lilies. And what have we got? Ah yes, we have African Queen. Now this is a fantastic, fantastic orange lily that I've grown before and absolutely loved. Kind of trumpet shaped and beautifully fragrant, and just the colour, it's like a kind of a subdued orange, you might say peach even, which is my absolute favourite kind of colour in the garden. And we're going to see what these lilies look like. And isn't it funny how like unsymmetrical lily bulbs are? Tulips are much more symmetrical. 3. Now I kept these lilies in the cool greenhouse after they arrived, just to make sure that nothing bad would happen to them, that they wouldn't start to rot, because this is always a danger when you buy things and they arrive and you don't plant them straight away. Planting straight away is definitely the best policy. Now, does that look like the biggest one to you? We'll put this one here. 3, 4, 5. Now my lilies are all potted up. The only thing I need to do is to water them in well, which I'll do now. But one of the great things about having lilies in pots, of course, is that when they're in the greenhouse, the lily beetle can't get them, so they are that bit protected. However, as I said, these will be going out into the garden and I'll be battling the lily beetle single-handed. as the season goes on. Thank you very much for watching. If you are planting lilies now, then perhaps you want to take a look at the video I made last year, which I'll link to here at the end, about planting lilies directly in the garden. I also did that this year, and it's a wonderful thing just to know that they're there, and when you least expect it, up they'll come with their amazing fragrance. And that's really a super thing, to be walking around your garden and what's that? What's that? Because you forget, you know. And then the lilies remind you that they are fragrant as well as beautiful, which is an amazing combination. Thank you as always for watching, and I will see you on the next video. Bye.